Elizabeth Thorpe, and you're listening to Amanda Brown Lierman from Supermajority on Two Broads Talking Politics. I love Supermajority because women have been the majority of voters since the mid-60s and are on the cusp of becoming the most powerful force in America. And Supermajority is going to teach and train women how to do just that. So watch out, patriarchy. We're coming at you.
Supermajority is a new organization for women who want to build our collective power and use it to change this country for good.
Because one of us can be dismissed.
Two of us can be ignored. But together,
we aren't just the majority.
We are a supermajority, and we are unstoppable. Let's make sure the entire country knows it.
Hey everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, and I'm on today with Amanda Brown Lierman, who is the Managing Director of Supermajority. Hi, Amanda.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. So let's just start with kind of the big obvious question. What is Supermajority and how did this get started?
Yeah, the question of the hour. So Supermajority is meant to be a home for women's activism, and I think it's been sort of many years in the making, if I'm being honest. We have a group of badass organizers that have been lifelong leaders and activists on many different issues, certainly within different constituencies and also movements, with two of them coming out of the labor movement and Alicia having even founded the Black Lives Matter movement. So I think we're all sort of in a space coming out of this sort of year of resistance, going into the midterm elections where they had the sense that women were longing to do a little bit more. And they knew also the power of what that could look like. I think they had all sort of imagined that and envisioned that in many different ways. And so they came together to start having conversations about what it could or should look like, and really wanted to test the theory of the case before they took any drastic action, of course. So they hit the road, and they actually went to a bunch of different cities. They went to rural locations, to the suburbs. They talked to women that I think were in rooms that they had never been in before, with women that they had certainly never met before in their own communities. And we're just asking women the question of, what is it that you need? How else, in what other ways can you be supported as we hear from you that you want to do more? What does that mean to you? And from those conversations really distilled a couple of key things. The first being just that that they want to do more, and that staying home really isn't an option for them, but also that civic participation still is a little bit intimidating. It's daunting, and without real structure or even guidance or like best practice sharing, it's, hard to stay involved and engaged as a citizen, an activist, a voter, an advocate, particularly when women are juggling all of their other superpowers on a day-to-day basis. And there's, this really new crop of women that have come in following even the 2016 election, and certainly through the midterm elections when we saw a record number of women candidates on the ballot. These newly activated women still need sort of a wayfinder, if you will. And then we also heard that women want to be in community with others, and they want to understand and recognize and build our power, our collective power. That, I think, community was sort of the number one thing coming out of these listening sessions. And then we learned that they want to do a lot more than resist. I think we've sort of moved beyond that stage. Women are thinking about the roles that they want to play, and also they're thinking about how to actually solve problems. They want to be engaged in that way. They want to be engaged in those conversations and taking actions that help us move towards real solutions, from lack of affordable childcare to closing the pay gap, ending family separation, and even reforming our broken criminal justice system, those issues all resonate deeply with women. I think all of them sort of fall into this space, this conversation around gender equity and what that really means. And women are ready to challenge the status quo. They're ready to have a conversation. They're ready to challenge the candidates and their elected officials about what they're doing on those things, and really force real conversation and consequence on that. And so Supermajority really came to be towards the end of last year, early this year, a way that we wanted to aggregate activism and build women's power. So it will be this home for activism with women coming together, working across race, age, sexual orientation, faith, geography, and it's our goal to educate, train, and mobilize women so that we are aggregating their power to demand equity and solve the problems that women face in our country.
Excellent. And so you announced it just, I think, about a couple of weeks ago here.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago. I'm tracking it in the same way that I'm tracking my pregnancy right now.
And so you announced it, made a website, Facebook page, Twitter, and it seems like the response was pretty overwhelming pretty immediately. What sorts of numbers are you seeing of women immediately responding to this?
Yeah, and the truth is, even though all of us sitting at the table are organizers, I think we have all been overwhelmed by the response of women, even though they basically told us that they needed this. In many ways, they said, we're fired up, we want to do even more. And I think we really did sort of underestimate the interest and the excitement and enthusiasm. So we have close to 100,000 members now. They have signed up from all over the country. We have members that have signed up in all 50 states at this point. They are participating and engaging in many different ways. I think we have a couple of folks on our team. We're still a small team that are staying up all night long to answer the inquiries and questions that come in through our our email inbox, just making sure that we are being responsive. We are trying to stand up our organizing program so that people do have opportunities to engage both online and offline as we continue to move forward. And the one thing I want to call out also is we've been doing these welcome calls for our membership just to start to build some sense of community. Again, if you're connected to thousands of other women on the phone, you feel validated just in that, right, that you're not the only one. And so we've been doing these calls with some of our founders, and we've been offering them at many different times of day, on different days, just to try to make sure that we're accommodating as many different women as possible, and want to make sure that we are thoughtful as the sort of diversity of our membership is a true measure of success for us. And so we've been doing these calls, and they've been so fun, honestly, just to be connected with women, to be talking about, obviously what we're trying to do as an organization and as a community, but to hear from them also about what matters. And so we've been polling women about issues that matter to them or affect them or affect a loved one, and have been learning a lot. We've been using those opportunities as a time for the founders to just share lessons learned. They have a lot of battle wounds, so they've been sharing best practices from their own experiences. Jess Morales, we actually did a call. One of the calls that we did was on a Saturday night at 9 p.m. and shockingly had a couple hundred people on the call listening. And one of Jess's superpowers is actually she gives beauty and makeup advice. And so it was actually very funny to think that folks were getting on an organizing call about working for gender equity, but also getting all of the best tips for how to do it and also look good at the same time.
I think that's important.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's been, it's important for us to make sure that we are learning from the leaders, but also building a community based on them. We want to be responsive to what people are calling for, what they're asking for, and building a program that, reflects the diversity and embraces the diversity of the community, but also builds on that and leverages that and puts that to work. And so these membership calls have really been the first step in our organizing program as we intend to get on the road throughout the summer, with our first goal in terms of program really being to develop what, some might call ambitious, but we need an agenda around gender equity. All of these folks are signing up to tell us that, that they're ready to act on this and they're ready to fight for it. But what does that really mean to everyone? So we are embarking on an ambitious sort of strategy to pull together and define and package this agenda for gender equity that we can then lift up, that we can hold candidates throughout the cycle accountable to, and that we can get women within our membership, but even beyond our membership, really get them I usually say we get them the information about it, but also want to make sure that they are in formation around this agenda so that we can act as a collective and again, force real conversation and change.
There have been since the 2016 election, but going back before that, there's tons and tons of different organizations and different groups doing different things. How do you see your role as sort of pulling together maybe some of those different things? You said part of what you want to do is make sure that it's not overwhelming when you think like, I want to organize, what do I do? So how does that play into there being so many different ways to get involved?
No, definitely. And I think, we're at a moment in this country where women are activating, many of which are doing so for the first time. 20% of Americans have marched or protested since 2016. And the biggest issue driving these actions is support for women's rights. We then, in 2018, I was actually the political and organizing director at the DNC for the midterm cycle, and I saw firsthand how women made up the majority of the electorate, voting they were 54% of the electorate in a midterm election cycle that had pretty high turnout for that matter. So they created a historic 23-point gender gap. And, I think all of us have been so excited to see how women also propelled a record number of women into office. And the truth is that despite women being 51% of the country voting at record rates, we still lack power. We do the majority of the work. We are the majority of activists, of organizers, of donors, of voters. We are the majority in many organizations across the country as well that are leaning into this work, but we still don't have the sort of legislative and political power, and we're a long way from equity, if you will. So a couple of examples, I think, that help us relate to the other organizations that are definitely in this space, but allow us, I think we've been thinking about obviously collaborating as much as possible and working with others as much as possible to really pull it all together so that we really are greater than the sum of all of the parts. So 2/3, for example, of minimum wage workers in the United States are women, and women make just 80 cents on the dollar, and I'm sure have even talked about on this podcast compared to men, with women of color making a lot less. I think Latinas it's like 53 cents on the dollar. The United States ranks 78th in the world for women's political representation. And just to put that into context, we are below Somalia in that stat. And American women today are 50% more likely to die in childbirth than their own mothers. And I won't even go down the rabbit hole of what that looks like in terms of with Black women and Black maternal mortality. But yet these issues and so many others are always dismissed as social and soft issues as opposed to being embraced as the national imperatives. And one of our founders, Alicia Garza, would go so far to say national emergencies that they really are. And so women are building power. We're coming together. And again, the goal really is to create something bigger than our parts. So yes, there are many people and many organizers, community leaders that have been working across multiple issues, from economic justice and domestic workers' rights to reproductive health. And we realized the reason that Supermajority, that we wanted to sort of birth this, if you will, is because we realized the opportunity to work across all of those things and aggregate all of our power across all of those different, what some people might call barriers or just differences. We can build engagement, we can demand equity, and we can solve problems. And we were just really tired of all of the issues that we, even if we've been working on them in silos or working on them, in like pockets within our own communities, we want to make sure that they're elevated in a way that they're a part of the national dialogue, that they're brought and raised particularly in the context of this election cycle. And we knew that if we connected women to each other and to the resources to be the most effective advocates, but also the most effective organizers, we can and we will change the direction of this country. Really do believe that women are our greatest hope and want to make sure that we as Supermajority are investing in women as the organizers that we all are so naturally. Want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to bolster that, to support that, and to connect women with other women who are in this fight, since we're all in it together.
I've seen a couple of places listed that the goal is to get 2 million women involved for the next election cycle in 2020. Is that still sort of the goal, the hope, and why that number? What do you think that 2 million number will help accomplish?
Yeah, great question. And I think one that, being honest, one that we wrestled with even before we were sort of coming into the world, like what would we say, right? What were we setting out to do? And wanted to give ourselves a goal to hold ourselves accountable, but also to show that this is possible. And, what does happen if you have 2 million women that are signed up and ready to fight for gender equity and saying, I'm committing X number of hours, or I will travel to 10 different states, or I'll talk to 50 different women about this and have that conversation. If we're able to mobilize and if we're able to, first educate and train that number of women, they have the potential to reach and activate millions more women in their communities. And that together, those two things combined, will allow us to make sure that women's voices really are heard and that a women's agenda is represented in the policy debates, in legislative fights, and at the ballot box in 2020 and beyond. So, it's an ambitious goal. I think it keeps all of us up at night, but is one that we are striving towards and definitely possible based on the incoming just in the last couple of weeks. And there will be many, many other ways for us to build this community. I will say one of the things, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, but it is really important to us to make sure that we're building this community in a way that is reflective of what women across the country look like as well. So the intergenerational, just multiracial community, we want to make sure that it's, accessible and inclusive and welcoming to all, as we do know that certainly there are many things that might divide us, many differences that we might share. Women certainly are not a monolith, but we know that we do share values. We do share a willingness to fight for gender equity, and the time to demand that and have that fight is right now.
If people listening would like to become part of that 2 million number, how do they join?
Yeah, I say welcome. You can go to supermajority.com and sign up. The first sort of step, if you will, takes you to a membership profile, which just allows us to get to know you a little bit more. And then you will be well on your way to hearing from us about ways to get connected, with the first thing being join us on one of these membership calls that I described before. And then we, again, will be hitting the road in the next month or so. So we will be back in touch as we are in cities and towns across the country and are excited to connect with everyone. I think Cecile Richard says this a lot of just, I wish that I could literally talk to everyone. So we are excited to be in as many places as humanly possible, and really do look forward to building this community with, again, women across the country.
And you guys have an excellent web store.
I love it. Yeah,
I already have my tote bag. I was carrying it around yesterday proudly.
I think all of us were really excited when the tote bags came in because they're sizable tote bags. They're also, you can put a lot of stuff in those things, unlike some of the other merch that you get from different places. So we were all really happy about that.
And even toddler T-shirts and onesies.
Yeah, I will. That was also a funny moment internally with we have several folks on our team that have young children and are right in the front of having all of the sort of blowouts, if you will. And so we had a lot of discussion about what color the onesie should be. It was like, you cannot offer a white onesie. That's completely tone deaf.
Well, I have been strongly encouraging all of the presidential candidates to get gear for young children in their stores, and they're slowly coming around. So I'm glad to see that right off the bat here.
Yeah, I'm sure that will come around. But yeah, we're excited to offer it. And I think one of my personal machinations, if any of our folks, team members, are listening to this podcast, I'll put in a plug that we also need to add like Super Amanda to the bottom of that tote and personalize the gear a little bit more.
I love it. Well, we'll put links up on our website and definitely encourage everyone to join in and buy your gear, show off.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that. And you can obviously also just follow us in conversation on all of our social channels. So on Twitter, we are at Supermajority, on Instagram also at Supermajority, and then on Facebook you can join us at the Supermajority.
All right, excellent. Is there anything else you wanted to make sure that we talk about?
No, I mean, I think and even the news of this week with the abortion bans, just to give that, lift that up in some way and just, share that that's just another example of the consequences of a government that doesn't represent or even respond to us when we are mobilizing. This is, multiplying across the country. It's not going away. So mostly want to just send some love out to all of my sisters out there, that we will get through and we will get beyond this sort of systemic and strategic calculated strategy. We know that agenda. We know that they are trying to overturn Roe, but I'm overly optimistic and hopeful because the good news really is that women are watching and that women are organizing and women are going to show up and show out at the polls. And I, again, could not be more proud to be a part of Supermajority. I could not be more proud to be a part of this community with so many other women that are, mad as hell and ready to show up at the polls and say, and demand real change.
All right. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for joining me today. I am super excited about Supermajority.
Love it.
Can't wait
super.
Can't wait to hear more. I hope one of those listening tours is coming to Chicago, and I'll be
Definitely.
There front and center.
Excellent. Well, we just want to say thank you for having us on. Hopefully this is the first of many conversations, and we, again, are really excited and grateful for this opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast.